Shalom, everybody. Ringo here. Beautiful day in LA.
So, it was good to be able to kind of get it out in a song.
The whole, origin of where we're all coming from.
I'm prepared for death because I don't believe in it. I think it's just getting out of one car and getting into another.
Hi, and hey. And welcome to another broadcast of Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast. I'm Ken Michaels. I'm one of the regular co-hosts of the show, a bi-weekly show in which we celebrate the most successful solo careers of all time, that being from the four Beatles. And hopefully you might know me for a few of my other Beatles programs, a syndicated radio show called Every Little Thing, also a Beatles podcast show called Things We Said Today. And I'm being joined right now with two of my regular co-hosts and a special guest. First of all, we'll introduce one of the co-hosts of the Paul McCartney solo Paul McCartney podcast, Two Legs, along with David Gargolino, and that is Tom Hunyady. Hi, Tom.
Hello, everybody. Ken, Kit, mystery guest, whoever you are, hello, and can't wait to get this show started.
Okay, also we have with us the queen of Beatles media, and she has earned that title. You know why? By watching this show every single week or every couple of weeks. And she is the author of some fine books like Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours to the Beatles' Lesser Works, Michael Jackson FAQ. She also co-hosts a soul segment called Bottomless Soul on the radio, which will air tonight, by the way. And a lot of articles she's written called Deep Tracks on the Beatles, and that is our own Kit O'Toole. Hi, Kit.
Hey, Ken. Hi, Tom. Hi, mystery guest. Good to see you all.
So
Hello.
now everybody's wondering who this mystery guest is.
I'm not.
Well, you've all heard the Beatles song Mean Mr. Mustard, but unbeknownst to most Beatle fans, Mean Mr. Mustard has a kid brother that no one has known about until now. He's much nicer than Mustard. And he goes by the name of Mean Mr. Mayo. And he has his own YouTube channel where he talks a lot about the Beatles, the solo Beatles. He listens to our show, loves our show,
Sure do.
which is one of the reasons why he's with us. And Ken Womack,
Yep.
Ken Womack couldn't be here with us tonight, so we thought we'd bring him on. Welcome, Mean Mr. Mayo.
Well, I thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here. As you said, I love the show, and I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity. So I'm going to say hello to the Sun Queen, Kit, and hello, Ken. And I can see you and say hello to you now, actually, Tom, because all the images are good. I can see everybody. So that's good. And it's just really a thrill for me to be here. And I don't say that. It just popped in my head. It sounds like a song we know, but that's not why I said it. It's not because of Sgt. Pepper. So,
Well, we're going to call you Joe, which is your real name.
yes.
It'd be silly to keep calling you Mayo throughout the night.
Exactly. And, I was thinking it's kind of appropriate in a way because, I mean, if you think about Ken Womack maybe as Johnny Carson, then I'm like Joe Garagiola when, John and Paul in 68 didn't get to meet Johnny Carson. Joe Garagiola wound up being the co-host. So there you go.
Of
Special
all
host.
people, that was one of the worst moments ever in Beatle history. John and Paul
Yeah.
being interviewed by Joe Garagiola. Very awkward night that was for
Yes.
everybody involved. Anyway,
Yes.
before we start, why don't you just tell the folks about your YouTube channel and what it's all about?
Yes, okay. Well, briefly, I have a YouTube channel, as you said, Mean Mr. Mayo. I don't know. I guess Father Mackenzie was being used up. Maybe Uncle Albert was already, I don't know, who was used. And I've been 7 years doing this. Next month will be 7 years. And actually, it's so successful, more than I thought it would be. I didn't think I would be doing as well as I am. And I love to meet people who watch the show. I get to meet them at the Beatle Fest a lot, Fest for Beatles fans, excuse me. And basically, I do a lot of Beatles videos. It's primarily a Beatles channel where I do reviews and discussions on Beatles, but I also do a little offbeat stuff too, like rant videos about things, like I don't know, let's say like those commercials we see that from drug companies always telling you the side effects and how annoying that is to watch during TV. But it's mostly a music channel, though, and just happy to be here. It's what I do, so I have fun doing it.
Okay, and it's got to be a great feeling to watch your audience grow through all these years.
Yeah,
with our shows.
It's almost 8,000 subs. I can't believe it. I never thought that people would like it so much, but here we are.
All right, good for you. All right, our show tonight, our main topic is going to be discussing the humorous side of George Harrison throughout his career. Before we do that, as we always do, we'd like to bring you some Beatle news. As this is our first show in only 1 week, there's less news than you would normally hear. It's a little thinner than it would be on most cases. So I'm just going to run down a few things. Ringo Starr's albums, Ringo's Rotogravure and Ringo the Fourth, are being remastered for vinyl release from the label known as Good Friday. No release date is being given yet, but it's coming soon. This is the same label that put out the Bad Boy releases. And as long as Tom is here, and I know Tom got the Bad Boy release, have you listened to the album?
Yeah, it's not bad at all. And they also did Time Takes Time as well. Both of them they're both color vinyl. They're nice, and they sound great. So,
and there was no word whether this was going to be colored vinyl or not, though, right?
No. All we know is that it's just coming soon. So.
Yeah. Did you notice a difference in the sound quality since it's remastered?
Not from the original vinyl release, because I never had the original vinyl, but I do have the CDs from the 90s, and they just sound a little more fuller, like you would with vinyl over CD, in my opinion. So, I would love to maybe one day compare them to the original releases, but for now I'm happy with the quality.
Okay. I'm very happy that these are coming out on vinyl, but being a CD guy, I wish that the remasters would come out of Ringo's albums on CD. Let's hope for that in the future.
Yeah, I've been meaning to reach out to Friday Music to see if it's just vinyl and if they're going to do a CD release as well. So, but I think Friday Music is basically vinyl only. So, find out.
All right. Now, we discussed this on last week's show. We all know that the Beatles recording of Help is now being used in a Google commercial on television. I'm hearing it all day long now. But also, Here Comes the Sun is being used in a commercial for Xfinity. But it's not the Beatles recording, it's a cover version of it. So, as we discussed last week, Beatles songs being used in TV commercials. As long as you're here, Joe, what's your take on that?
Yeah.
Because some people are disturbed by it.
Well, I'm one of the people, I have mixed feelings on it. My first reaction is to be disturbed by it, only because, the Beatles always said, we had a lot of offers back in the day, you can imagine, for like the soft drinks commercials and things like that, and we thought that would somehow cheapen what we do. I think what goes through my mind, I keep saying, is in the 1970s, I remember the Good Vibrations commercial with Sunkissed.
Right.
And to this day, I still think of oranges so when I hear the Good Vibrations, And I think it depends how much you actually hear it. I mean, if it's probably going to be a short-lived thing, it's probably not going to be played for years. It's not going to be the new theme like the post office has Fly Like an Eagle as the theme, I'm just worried about an association for some people with that. Every time you hear Help, you think Google. That's what I'm worried about. But it's a wonderful opportunity for maybe young people who aren't familiar with the Beatles songs to get introduced. And that's another, that's the positive side of it. So
yeah, in most cases, when songs are used in commercials over the years later, I don't remember what the product was. It doesn't stick out in my mind. What you said about Good Vibrations and Sunkissed is one of the few exceptions where I'll remember when I hear Good Vibrations. I'll think of that. But yeah. Also, Julian Lennon is making bookstore appearances. Actually, he's doing one tonight. It's probably wrapped up by now at the Barnes & Noble in Union Square in New York City. He's promoting his new children's book called Love the Earth, which is the third in a trilogy of books aimed at teaching children about preserving the environment and the ecology. And he will also be making an in-store appearance at Bookends in Ridgewood, New Jersey tomorrow at 6 p.m. Also at the Barnes & Noble on Grove Street in Los Angeles on April the 30th at 7 p.m. And you might want to jot this down. Julian is scheduled to be on The View tomorrow morning. Okay, Julian on The View. A new book is coming out called Tell Me What You See, The Ultimate Guide to John, Paul, George, and Ringo on TV and Video. It's by Peter Chexfield. Amazon lists that the book includes every appearance from the Beatles' performance of Some Other Guy at the Cavern in 1962 to Paul's new video for Who Cares in December of 2018. This book is a listing of every known TV performance, promotional video, and live telecast from the Beatles' group and solo careers. It also includes chart positions, band lineups, anecdotes, and more.
Does that say UK and US, or is it one or the other? Is there any information on that?
I believe it's US.
Okay.
I could double check as we're doing the show. But I think the book is out already, actually.
Okay. I'll look it up. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Also, one last thing, an upright piano that John Lennon used to compose some of the songs for the Sgt. Pepper album has been sold at an auction for $718,000 to Jim Irsay, who is the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. And he's a noted Beatlemaniac and memorabilia collector. John gave this piano to a friend, but first he had a plaque affixed to it, which read, "On this piano was written, a day in the life, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, good morning." Doesn't say good morning, good morning. I guess that was John's doing. Being for the benefit of Mr. Kite and many others, John Lennon, 1971. Irsay also owns a 1963 drum kit that Ringo used on the Beatles' early hits. All right.
Cool.
That's it for news, unless you guys have anything you want to add.
Well,
That's
Tom,
enough. That's good.
yeah, well, Tom, I see you're excited about the McGear release. I saw that. You're psyched about that.
I certainly am. I pre-ordered the vinyl. So you can get the vinyl or you can get the CD, and then the first 100 people to get the vinyl or a CD, you can get it to where it comes with a autographed postcard. So I ended up getting the autographed postcard with the vinyl. The CD one sold out within minutes, apparently. So yeah, looking forward to the release in June.
Yeah, lots of outtakes.
Yes, absolutely.
On this. It's 2 CDs and 1 DVD.
Yeah, interviews and a promotional video for "Leave It," I believe the title of the song is.
Yeah, "Leave It" was the first single from the album. Yeah. Okay, end of June for that. All right, so our main topic, as I said, is the humorous side of George Harrison, and that's throughout his entire career, Beatles solo, as we've witnessed it in song, perhaps in his videos, interviews, whatever we want to talk about. And George really was a pretty fascinating person. And I know that I've said on the show that there were many sides to George. There was a very serious side to him, and then there was a very comical side of him that really had a strange, dark, wicked sense of humor at times. And yeah, that's one of the many things that we love about him. And even if you go back to the Beatle days, I point out a few Beatles songs where lyrically it showed his sense of humor, even though he was mixing either serious or social commentary with something funny, like in Taxman. Let me tell you how it will be. There's 1 for you, 19 for me. I mean, even when he talked about the song, he would laugh about that particular line. So it shows that he's using a sense of humor to talk about something serious like that. As well as Only a Northern Song. You know, he's making fun of Northern songs. And the recordings that the Beatles are making in the process. Savoy Truffle, you know, is also kind of funny because until George told us it was about Eric Clapton and his sweet tooth. Yeah. We didn't really know about that, but it makes a lot of sense, when he's talking about you'll have to have them all pulled out, his teeth, after the Savoy truffle. So, even in the Beatle days, he mixed humor into his lyrics. So why don't we go around and let's just talk about in song, what you have found in George's career to be his funniest moments. How about you, Joe? We'll start with you. Name a few songs.
Well, let me see. Stuff that's obvious, like solo, especially a Crackerbox Palace, is a wonderful sense of humor, and the video, of course, is hilarious. I love watching it. And also from the same album, 33 and a Third, we have this song. Takes a humorous stab, if you will, at what he went through with the My Sweet Lord court case and everything. That's a lot of fun. That's one of his most fun videos. I think I like the video better than the song, actually, believe it or not. I mean, I could name all of them. I don't want to leave anybody else without any. But I was thinking of stuff like Cockamamie Business, which you don't get to hear that often unless you're listening to the Best of Dark Horse album compilation, and that's got a lot of funny things talking about his nervous system. This is one of favorite expression of his, how he gave his nervous system and all that. And there's some funny lyrics there with the Ed Sullivan show and stuff like that. That's a few that came to mind. I'll mention one more if I may. I was thinking of Soft-Hearted Hannah from the self-titled George Harrison album. That is such a fun, delightful song to listen to. And I like how the end of it gets all drunken sounding, and it gets wavery and changes. And I'll never forget, I had the cassette tape once when it first came out, and it said something about the end of Soft-Hearted Hannah is deliberate. It said it on there so that you knew it wasn't an error, with nothing wrong with your tape unspooling or anything. Right. So those are what came to mind pretty quick.
There was like a speed adjustment to the song. Yeah. But I love the fact you have to mention this song. And what I love about that particular song, among many things, is that maybe some fans are not aware that the publishing company that was suing George was called Bright Publishing. And in the lyrics, George sings, "This tune has nothing bright about it." So
I didn't get that.
Yeah, he stuck that in there. And I happen to have noted, since you mentioned Cockamamie Business and the nervous system line, that's a funny line right there. He actually says, "There are too many things stressing out the nervous system. Girls you used to know, fellas that may have kissed them. Some got rabies, some got fleas, some got incurable diseases from this cockamamie business." And I love his sense of humor there, and just the fact that he used the word cockamamie. I mean, that's actually, it's a Yiddish word, and it just means crazy, something that makes no sense. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people who bought the Best of Dark Horse, heard that song, didn't know what cockamamie meant, but George evidently did. But just the fact that he used that line, used that word.
The word in it.
Kit, how about mentioning a few songs?
Well, first, I just want to mention, I think, as I went through these songs, I was thinking, his humor kind of falls into two very general categories, which are, the absurdist kind of humor where it's wordplay, kind of like John. I mean, like John Lennon. I mean, he loved that too. And as you mentioned, this sort of black humor, this dark humor, satire, whatever, really kind of, some nasty digs in it.
Right.
And, I just think it's interesting. Plus, remember, who one of George's heroes was George Formby. And, I gave a presentation on this a couple of years ago and all about the influence of British music hall. George Formby was a music hall performer and would write these songs that were kind of, a lot of wordplay, kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of stuff. But it had, clearly an impact on George's songwriting. So, a couple of examples, and a few of our viewers have mentioned this already. His Name is Legs. I would say that's the absurdist part. By the way, I'm trying to decide which one of you I'm going to nickname the King of La-Di-Da. I think one of you needs to be, I'm the Sun Queen or the Queen of Beauty.
I like the song.
Yeah.
Ringo song.
Yeah, right. There you go. Yeah, so I mean, just really absurdist and almost, I know it's about the drummer of the Bonzo Dog Doodah band, but it's also, he clearly had so much fun with wordplay. But as I said, you've got the nastier side. Even something like Not Guilty, which is very pointed, but I mean the lines, not guilty for looking like a freak, making friends with every Sikh. I mean, I just thought, he puts in lines like that, or Blood from a Clone, which is of course a pretty was a shot at his record company, who said he wasn't making songs that were commercial enough. I mean, just great lyrics there. They say they like it now, but in the market, it may not go well, as it's too laid back. You need some papa, nothing like Frank Zappa. Zappa and that new wave. They don't play that crap. I mean, really funny, but the venom is right there. I mean, he's really angry, but he kind of in a way diffuses it with humor. So I just think that's just fascinating, elements of his humor. These two, this absurdist, silly, and then this dark, dark side.
It's a certain skill to be able to blend those two together, and George does it so well. And as we're going to discuss maybe in some other songs, there's some other ones we can point out in that category. Tom, how about you?
Yeah, all good picks by all of you. I'm kind of glad we're not picking the same songs here or whatever. But song, Miss Odell, for one. I just love, him cracking up, in the middle of the song. And what was that all about? I mean, is he just having a good time in the studio, or just forgetting the lyrics? And then, with the sense of humor there, or making a dig, then he puts Paul's phone number at the end of the song. One of my favorite parts of that song. Wreck of the Hesperus is another one that's kind of humorous. Is talking about himself, and and he's okay. He's getting through. I like the line "Getting old as my mother." It's one of the lines that I like. In that song. Another one, "Sue Me, Sue You Blues."
Right.
Yeah, the very first verse. You serve me and I'll serve you. Swing your partners, all get screwed. I'll bring mine and get together and we'll all have a bad time. Bring your lawyer and I'll bring mine. And yeah, it's gonna be a bad time. So. Another funny one in the song. So many different, Blood from a Clone, like you said, kid. Just beating your head against a brick wall. I mean, I'm sure it's just out of frustration, with him, and it's comical. I mean, you think about him, in these situations, and it's very comical.
I agree.
One of my favorite lines, if I may, just for a minute, that just popped into my head. I don't want to forget it. And when Kit was, talking about, sometimes the sarcasm and the nastiness. I love the line when he sings in "This Guitar Can't Keep from Crying," when he says, what do you say? Learn to get up when I fall. Can even climb rolling stone walls. Like meeting the newspaper.
While you create and make a fence, bring it down to your arrogance. Another one too that
Well, that was an attack on Rolling Stone because of the way that they reviewed his Dark Horse tour, which he didn't take too kindly to that. He was affected by that a lot. But sometimes you don't know if George is being nasty or if there's this thing in him where he puts a twist on it, so that
nasty, it's still funny.
Yeah, but that's, like I said, there's a certain talent that comes with mixing those two together. I was going to bring up,
it's like something. I'm sorry, Ken, interrupt, but something like going back to the Beatles, like Piggies, where he's, obviously that was political satire, but he did it in a way that he was delivering a message, but he was doing, it was kind of funny. I mean, it was, the images of these, I love the, leading Piggy lives, and it just, I think he knew how to, sort of couch instead of just preaching at us. He could have written a song saying, down with politicians and, all that. But instead, he uses this humor to kind of make the message more palatable. Perhaps he was so good at that.
Right. Clutching forks and knives to eat their bacon.
Yep.
Yep.
I wonder what you guys think, and all of our viewers, of George's take on Bye Bye Love.
Oh, yeah.
The Everly Brothers song, because at the time he was breaking up with Patty Boyd, and Patty was going with Eric, his best friend. And so George had added his own lyrics to the song. It was his own arrangement to it. And one of the verses reads, "There goes our lady with a you-know-who. I hope she's happy and old Clapper too. We had good rhythm and a little slide. Then she stepped in, did me a favor. I threw them both out." So when you hear that, are you saying, wow, is he showing bitterness?
He seemed okay with
this. Or is he... Well, you know what George said at the time, I'd rather that she was with him than some jerk.
Yeah.
That's what he would say to the media. But he's also human, and he does have feelings. So I'm wondering if he was bitter, if this shows bitterness, or if he's having fun with it.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some bitterness and some sense of humor in his own life as well. I mean, he's able to, turn it around on himself. And, the fact that he's able to write about it and rather just, push it away, I think that's great. I mean, get it out, whether it's, humorous.
I think the song does sound bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I got that record and heard it, is the first thought, oh, how great. He's covering Bye Bye Love. What a wonderful, and then you hear it. It's like, whoa, that's
not Bye Bye Love.
That's not Bye Bye Love. What is it? Yeah. So, and our viewer, John Hockley, said he likes it better than the Everly Brothers version.
Oh.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it was, I agree. I think it's a bit of both. I mean, just like I was saying earlier, he could couch these messages in, with humor. So, I mean, I'm sure there was bitterness there, but he wrote it in a way that, I don't know, it's between laughing and saying, ouch. He was very good at that too.
Yeah, and I always love that version. I got to be honest. It's so completely different than what the Everly Brothers did. Not just the fact that he added his own verses to it. It had a completely different message there. But the whole arrangement was so different than what Phil and Don did. That was really his own take on it. I want to bring up the song Grease. Because, for years, I never knew what the words were. And if you own the album of Gon Troppo, it just said instrumental. It didn't have the words at all. And I was looking at it, I was very much anticipating the new I Me Mine book when it came out, because it updated George's songs past 1979 so I could see the lyrics, and Grease was not in there. But I happened to have gone online and Googled this, and lo and behold, I only now have discovered the lyrics of Grease.
Oh,
and well, there's a few humorous lines in here. I'll read it to you. You go to Slavia instead of Yugoslavia. You go to Slavia, half past Armenia, down and towards the Med. Left side of Turkey, nowhere near Fiji, you will find Greece. Then there's Eume Athena, handed on Plato, hole in my Socrates, instead of hole in my sock. I came Acropolis on Monte Pythagoras, Ulysses, Greece. It's weird, but I love it. Like hole in my, it could be hole in my sock, hole in my Socrates. I knew that he was saying Monte Pythagoras. And I knew he was saying Socrates and Plato, but I didn't know the rest of the words there. And I always thought he said, you will find Greece, but it's Ulysses, Greece. So it's kind of bizarre, but throwing all these combinations of words, having some fun with them.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think very in a way very much like John. I mean,
right.
There was nothing he loved more, as we all know, than wordplay. I mean, not just in his songs, read his books.
Right.
And so, clearly George had that. But again, they kind of grew up in that same kind of British humor, and part of it was having fun with language, George certainly did. But this is one of the reasons I'm glad I'm doing this show, because now I finally know the lyrics. So, all these years.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't know.
I didn't know until I just looked it up. I didn't think it would be online.
That's so cool.
Although I never looked for the songbook, the sheet music for it. It probably would be in there, but I should have done that.
Yeah.
Anybody want to mention more songs? I have a few more listed here.
I listed a few. I think you covered all the ones I had here. When We Was Fab, of course.
Oh, I was just going to mention that. Yeah, that's a great one.
full of humor, and we know the lyrics of that. I don't know. I'm thinking also of. I guess we go on into that a little later, right? About other things kind of stemming from like some of the music videos and what he did in the video for When We Was Fab. Having Ringo was always good for a laugh, carrying that piano or organ, whatever he was carrying, out one screen, coming back the other end, carrying it again. Funny stuff in there, and him getting into the Sergeant Pepper suit, which he did in the Ding Dong Ding Dong video, right? He put the Sergeant Pepper suit on for a moment.
He was also naked in there.
That's good.
He was also naked in there for a split second. I also wanted to mention "Cheer Down," which is a great phrase to use instead of "cheer up." And there's some, clever lyrics in that song. I love "When your teeth drop out, you'll get by even without taking a bite." Good stuff there. And I do love Cockamamie Business, like you said. Wreck of the Hesperus, I wrote down. And George, when Cloud9 came out, he talked about the Wreck of the Hesperus, and he said that sometimes he would come from school and he would be a mess. His hair would be a mess, and his mother would say to him, "Oh, look at you. You look like the Wreck of the Hesperus." So I guess that phrase stuck with him. So, whenever I hear that song, that image is planted in my head of his mother saying that to him.
That's where he got that line from Piggies from Mom too, right? What they needs a damn good whacking. I heard he got that from Mom.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of Mom's influence.
Yeah. Got My Mind Set on You. While it wasn't necessarily a funny song, the video, the most popular video for the song, had him playing guitar in this den or this library, and the room would shake and there would be birds who would be hopping up and down and everything. But I always think of it sort of as a funny song, only because in the video, there's a moment when he does a somersault and it's not George.
Right.
And it's so obvious that it's not George, and they make it so that it's not him. And that's such
I knew somebody at the time who thought it really was George. Yeah. I really did. I knew a guy. I said, "No, it's not George. It's obvious. It's not."
Wow, he's so talented.
You can do backflips too. Very amazing.
Sometimes the video is really, it brings another, it shows more of a sense of humor from George, even if the song may not be funny. I mean, Blow Away, I wrote down, because it's probably the cheapest video that George ever made, because you see him riding a plastic toy duck. It's like, George has said that he loves making music, but he doesn't necessarily like to promote his music. And sometimes when he does these things, he's forced to do it. This looks like a forced video. You had to have something for Blow Away, but I laugh when I think about that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, when you brought up Got My Mind Set on You, that's to me what made that video hilarious, because it was clear, and I'm not talking about the pinball machine one, of course,
right?
But the other one, he clearly didn't want to be there, and there's even a moment where he kind of looks off camera, like somebody must have been making fun of him off camera or something about it, and he's just looking, kind of rolling his eyes, and and then, as you said, when the guy does the backflip, they don't bother to hide that it's not him. I mean, it's wonder. I mean, it's just it's wonderful, and it does sort of play on that this is just not his thing. But I think that's great that they made a joke out of it in the whole video.
Right. And it was really a good, fun video overall.
It was.
Okay. Any more songs you want to bring up? I want to bring up the Traveling Wilburys because certainly,
of course,
there was definitely a great sense of humor in that band. You want to talk about that, Tom?
Sure.
Yeah, the song I was playing not too long ago, "She's My Baby." Love that one, especially Dylan's last line. She can ride a boat. She can even make it float. She likes to stick her tongue, right down my throat.
That's great.
Dirty, but whoever wrote that line, right on.
And it was the way Dylan delivered it.
Yeah, that voice. To stick her tongue right down my throat. It's great.
You do that well, Joe.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I do imitations too. So.
Okay.
And then, obviously, the Wilbury Twist, that video of that one was fun too.
Oh, it's good. That fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What I found interesting is that there are certain songs like Inside Out.
Yeah.
Which is really a serious topic. It's about pollution. It's how we're endangering the environment. And most of the lyrics are all about that. And then they stick in, "Don't it make you want to twist and shout when you're inside out?" So they lighten things up in the song by doing that. So it's not 100% serious. So I found that interesting. Even though they're a fun group and it's all about having fun in the Traveling Wilburys, it's usually very lighthearted. They do tackle serious subjects. The Devil's Been Busy is the same thing.
Yeah.
And like you said, Wilbury Twist is really funny.
Yeah.
I love you hop around the room in your underwear and put your teeth in a glass.
Fall on your ass. I mean, it's,
To hear George say,
don't forget to spin
your
your body like a screw. I love that. Spin it like a screw. Not like a top.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, but exactly. The first time I heard that, and I heard George deliver that, like, "fall on your ass," I'm like, this is great.
That's right. That's a good one. Good one to point out. Yeah.
I said, that's George saying that line.
Mm-hmm.
All on your ass.
I think, just wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I think, and somebody mentioned earlier, and I apologize, I didn't get who said this, but they were saying, "Handle with Care" has a couple of, sort of amusing lines in it. And, I mean, it's not, and this is another part of his humor. I think some of it is not exactly, laugh out loud, slapstick. I mean, it's just, it's clever. It just, somebody else mentioned the great lyric in Cracker Box Palace, "I was so young when I was born." I mean, right. That's one of my favorite opening lines of any George song. That just grabs you immediately, like, what? I mean, that's what your first reaction was, like, wait a minute. But it's it's funny, and it really it introduces you to the kind of absurdity of the song. So
right. And that's another classic example of a very funny video and so well done. And Eric Idle, I believe, directed that video. But just to see all the different characters around George's estate, it's just really funny, very well done there. And the whole story about that song was that George had met Lord Buckley's manager, the comedian Lord Buckley. And evidently George is a fan of Lord Buckley, who at the time I think had passed away. Maybe. I have to check on that. But his manager invited George to Lord Buckley's house, which was called Cracker Box Palace. Mm-hmm. So George heard that those two words and thought that'd be a great title for a song. And sometimes you just associate the song with George's mansion, his estate, but it really came from Lord Buckley. Yeah.
And well, and even, along those lines, the Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp, that, of course, had to do with the owner of Friar Park. And I'm scrolling down. By the way, Ken Womack, if you're watching this, I put my notes on this iPad this time. So see how neatly they're typed. But anyway, there was a wonderful line in that. Yeah, here it is. Okay. Let it roll across the floor, through the hall and out the door, to the fountain of perpetual mirth. That's wonderful. I just think that's such a, great, again, just sort of an amusing line that's introducing you to this, welcoming you to this other world, of fantasy, and it's just great stuff.
Yeah, well, George used a lot of Frankie Crisp's sayings, which were written on the walls of the home that he bought there, the estate. Like the answers at the end was taken from something that Sir Frankie Crisp had written. The whole first verse, "Scan not a friend with a microscopic glass," all that came from Sir Frankie Crisp. Anyway, let's talk about his love for Monty Python and what a big part that played in his life. Kit?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's funny when I talk to people who saw the concert for George, and most people, when they saw it, knew why the Pythons were there, but I knew some people who were just, horrified. How could they have had the lumberjack song and all that? It was perfect for him because I can see why he would have been attracted to Python, because it had that absurdist, kind of humor to it. And of course, the Eric Idle directed was This Song. I think he directed the This Song video. Then I'm trying to remember if any of them directed Cracker Box Palace.
I think Eric Idle did.
So he had directed that too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, and they work with the songs. And so I think, there was a nice, it was a nice collaboration, to have. And then, of course, you have the Ruddles, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in just a second. So, and then, of course, producing Life of Brian. And, he just, but again, I think you can see as we're talking about these songs, why he loved them so much, because they were the same mind, I think.
Right. Okay. Joe, you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, I was thinking of the clip that I'm sure we've all seen when he, is it the Rutland clip where he comes down, they start playing the music to My Sweet Lord, and you think he's going to go in to sing a serious version of My Sweet Lord, and he winds up doing the pirate song. I mean, I guess because of, again, the lawsuit, I suppose, poking fun at that. That's always a favorite little clip that he did. And in addition to, the Ruddles, you're saying, because George actually was willing to appear in there and poke fun at the Beatles as a reporter, which was good. He also was in the Agner Rats special that Ringo did.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 78. And he has a little part at the beginning again, I guess he's kind of like giving the news again, news reporter, something like that. Which you don't get to see that often, but I remember that. And that's it as far as I can think of as far as that relation to comedy with Python and things like that. I have some some way to get to some quotes from George, but I'm saving them for later. That's general quotes.
Okay. You want to end the show with a big bang, I think.
Yeah. If you want.
Tom, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, the Python thing, throughout the 70s, you mentioned the Ringo special. What was the first thing he said in that when he's on? He says it must have been the trousers, which, where did that come from? That came from the
right.
So, I think
and he says shocked and stunned too. Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. He does that a lot too.
He also did that with in the interview that he did with Ringo, where they were talking about when George sued Ringo for the song "I'll Always Love You," and they were talking about how he didn't really care for the way how the mix was, and they had a good laugh about that. And Ringo says, go ahead and sue me, but I'll always love you. So I thought that was a good time too. But yeah, the Ruddle and seeing him, being the TV interviewer, interviewing Michael Palin, and they're talking about how they're going to stop, with all the theft going on, and then he's interviewing and all these things are coming out of the Ruddle floor building, and just nonstop, and then interviewing his buddy Ronnie Wood too, in another segment, which was really good. But yeah, I mean, you can tell that there's a really strong friendship between him and Eric Idle, and and you can tell by all their work that they've done together, and that's produced a lot of comical moments.
Yeah. Well, I like to bring up upon occasion that the Beatles were big fans of the Goons.
Mhm.
And that was a comedy troupe that was wacky for its time. And if you ever tried to listen to any of their comedy, it's a little far out there. I mean, the first time that I heard or watched Monty Python, it was way above my head. I had to get used to it. It's probably the same thing with the Goons. But I like to think of it all as being one big family, the Goons,
Right.
the Beatles, and Monty Python. And because, they were all influenced by each other. I mean, the Beatles were influenced by the Goons. I like to think that Monty Python was influenced by the Beatles.
Right.
There's some things that I've seen, in some of their movies where I'll think, oh, this reminds me of from Magical Mystery Tour, what the Beatles did here. So, definitely there is this love there, and I can understand why George loved Monty Python.
Mhm.
Very, very absurd, like you said, Kit, sense of humor there. And George loved absurdity. He loved really wacky sense of humor, over the top stuff. And just the fact that he helped Life of Brian survive and bring it to life. That was going to be the film company that originally was going to put it out, backed out on it. So he saved that film.
Right.
And then he even said, what's that?
And appeared in it.
Yep, for a few seconds.
Yep.
He did an Alfred Hitchcock in there.
Yep.
You had to look for him. It's like his little cameo there. But and I know that Monty Python's always been very grateful to George for that reason. But if you love A Life of Brian, be grateful to George for, helping to finance it.
Talking about films, a viewer said earlier, Matthew Smith, he pointed out that, George had one of the funniest scenes in Hard Day's Night. And, and so as an actor, he didn't think he was an actor, I don't think. But I agree that, that was one of my favorite parts too. I mean, he was a natural, oh my God, he's a natural. I didn't plan that, I swear. It just showed he had really, such a great sense of humor, and he was able to, do that scene and it's hysterical. That's one of my.
And it had
favorite.
that slightly nasty vibe to him that we like.
Exactly.
I kind of felt that John and George were the most natural on camera.
Oh, definitely.
Even though Ringo loved to do the acting the most.
Ringo too.
But I think that John and George could have had some future in acting if they wanted to take it seriously, but they didn't. So, yeah. But the Ruddles really was so phenomenal. The way the whole thing was done. And I always remember George saying that whenever people try to present the story of the Beatles, the one thing they miss is the sense of humor. And it was so brilliant, parody after parody, in the Ruddle story and how it was done, and the music from Neil Innes in particular. It was a work of genius. And, I think it was over the heads of some fans who didn't know the full story of the Beatles. But for those who knew it inside and out, they got all the in-jokes. And, Ruddles was amazing. And, again, George supported that, too.
Yeah.
And he was a good sport to appear in it. I mean, in that scene of, parroting Apple, collapsing and people taking, I remember when I first saw that, I'm like, that he is a good sport to do that scene.
Yeah.
Well, I think the one thing that's helped him survive through the years, with all the tragedies that have happened in Beatle history, is to have a sense of humor and look at it with some degree of humor. One other appearance that I'd like to bring up, which I think is so historic, was when George was on Saturday Night Live.
Yep.
Which I still think, you combine George with Paul Simon, could be the best show they ever did. And
the scene that I think that really showed his sense of humor, as he's trying to collect the $3,000.
Yeah.
So,
and he was
is
so
a bit
deadpan.
chintzy.
Yeah, and he just said it so naturally and so deadpan. It just worked so well.
right.
And then the fact that he took the offer from Lauren to introduce the show
Right.
live
For
from New
another-
York. Yeah.
Nice.
That was great. It was such a fine moment in the history of that show, and they've had so many of them, especially with different members of the Beatles. But between that and Paul Simon and Paul coming out with the turkey outfit and singing "Go Crazy" after all these years,
they show
there's a good chance that people are going to laugh at him.
Now he said to Lorne Michaels, "Lorne, I have some grave doubts about this opening sketch."
And he's a good actor. Talking about good actors, I thought Paul Simon was always a natural to me. Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he was hysterical on that show, and then of course, I mean, this is the not funny part. I always, after hearing them do Homeward Bound, I mean, like, why didn't they do? And Here Comes the Sun. Why didn't they do an album together? That would
oh God,
amazing.
Please. Yeah, they sounded so good together, so natural. Yep. I mean, between Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles, you've got masters of harmony there. And in the case of Paul Simon and George Harrison, two great guitar players together. And I've said that about Paul Simon and Paul McCartney. I wish the two of them, had worked together seriously.
Yeah.
Who knows if John had lived? Would the two of them have made a good combination? I don't know, but Paul Simon's one of the greats. No doubt about that. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to make mention of one thing about Monty Python, because sometimes in interviews George has made references to them, and you either had to know it or you didn't. He would bring up the nudge nudge sketch. There's a sketch from them which is one of my favorites, the Four Yorkshiremen sketch, which for those of you that don't know it, you could always look it up on YouTube. But it's four men on a moonlit night smoking cigars, drinking wine, and just reflecting on their childhood and what a rough childhood each one of them had. And each guy tries to top the previous guy as to how bad their childhood was. And so, like one of them would say, I had to wake up at 10 in the morning or 10 at night, half an hour before I went to bed, work for 29 hours, lick the road, come home, and my father would slash me with a knife or whatever. And don't quote me on this. It's something. It's fairly close to that.
That sounded good.
There was one interview that George gave where he was talking about the Beatles on the BBC, and they'd be doing so many performances, and then they'd come back, and Brian Epstein would slash him with a knife if they were lucky, and you either knew the sketch or you didn't. He would just say it, in his interviews. So it showed his love for Monty Python when he would mix that into conversation and interviews. All right. Anything else you guys want to add about George's sense of humor?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I have a couple of quotes I'd like, if I may. I just was thinking of some interviews, some of my favorite quotes that he's done for laughs. Well, one of them was, I think, in 1987 with the Cloud 9 release. And I think it was a Warner interview, and he was asked about who made the first videos or something like that, the music videos, and he says, "Well, Mick Jagger will probably say that he did," and he said, "But he was always a day late and a dollar short," which I thought was funny, his sense of humor, and I just had to mention, I love a bit with the anthology time. There's a sequence where Paul and George are first reuniting for the first time, I guess, in a little while, and they're hugging. And then Paul's wearing a jacket, and George says, "Is that a vegetarian leather jacket?" That's a sense of humor, I thought that was funny. And that's a couple of humorous bits that I always liked from George.
Yeah. Wow. I really liked, his appearance on the Dick Cavett show was full of laughs as well. And, and I think the one that stands out the most is when, Dick Cavett goes, Yoko sat in that chair. And then, he gets up. Gets out. That's pretty comical, too. But, the interviews is where I really just laughed the loudest. And because he was so quick with answers. And, a couple of them was, one is like he's talking about using LSD, and he's talking to the interviewer, and he goes, that's the thing about LSD, you don't need to do it twice. And so the interviewer goes, so you've only done it once? He goes, oh no, I took it many times.
Only needed it once.
Yeah. Another one where I think they're all receiving the MBE, and and he's getting, he's saying thanks, and he's going, it's nice getting one each, meaning everybody are getting one each, because we usually have trouble cutting them into four.
Right.
But the one that really I get the biggest kick out of is he was being interviewed about getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then the interviewer went into a completely different question, and he started talking about Paul redoing the songs from Give My Guards to Broad Street, and then he was like, well, Paul was thinking about doing other songs, including some of John's, like Beautiful Boy and Imagine. Does that surprise you he would do that? And George was like, maybe because he ran out of good songs of his own.
Yeah. I gotta confess, I have that written down here, but I was afraid to say it. So.
But the thing is, it's just so quick, with these, especially when it's Paul, it's just so quick, and natural, So those are some of my favorites.
Well, George could be blunt. That's another thing about him. And he also knows that he's one of the few people that could be critical of Paul or the Beatles. What are they going to do to him?
Right.
Only the Beatles can be critical of each other.
Yeah.
And so, Paul is always the diplomat, but if George wants to let him have it, he could do that publicly, and he has.
Yeah, and along that line, there's a thing when Paul was, going around for a while saying, I realized that George and I had never written together. That would be nice to do. And then George, I think it wasn't the same interview that Tom mentioned. It was another one where he said, well, I've only been in Paul's life for like 30 years. And now he wants to write with me, But he, like you said, he could say that, and it doesn't come off as harsh as somebody else if they had said it.
And he could poke. Oh, I'm just going to say, he could poke fun at himself too. I mean, I remember when the Beatles were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it was, as we all know, won't get into it now, but it was a tense situation, and and when he got up there and said, "Well, I don't have much to say because I'm the quiet Beatle," I mean, and the whole crowd just like as he said, so deadpan, and. And it really, I think, diffused some of the tension that was going on, particularly on the stage. And, and as I said, it showed he could poke fun at himself, too.
Yeah, he also said it's a shame that Paul's not here because he had the speech in his pocket.
Yeah.
Right.
But that interview that you brought up, Tom, where George said that about Paul, I'm pretty sure because George gave a lot of interviews at the time of Cloud9, and there was an interview he gave to what was the Canadian equivalent of MTV. And the person who interviewed him was this really young guy, and you could tell he was so infatuated with, hey, I'm interviewing a Beatle here. And, and when George said that, maybe he doesn't have some good songs of his own or whatever, the guy was like,
we got that on record.
What do I say here? Did he really say that? It's funny to watch because well,
we've got a chuckle out of that. If I can do one more real quick,
sure.
This is about them being, if they were millionaires yet during their early Beatle days, and it's with him and John mostly, but the interviewer is going, are you individually millionaires yet? And John goes, no, that's just a rumor. And then he goes, is Brian a millionaire? And John goes, no, even he's not, poor fellow. And then the interviewer goes, well, where does the money go? And John goes, well, a lot of it goes to Her Majesty. And then George right off the bat goes, she's a millionaire.
That was an incredible thing about them, how natural they were at bouncing off of each other and very quick.
Yeah, all of them were quick. Yeah.
At various times. Sometimes Paul had something very witty to say. It could come from either one of them.
Yeah. The Pan Am interview when they're all up there, and the one guy goes, when you guys going to get a haircut? And George was, I had one yesterday.
Right. That's not scripted. That just happened naturally. Yep. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So I think that puts a wrap on this topic. Why don't we give all the folks information about us and what we've got going on? Kit, how about you? We'll start with you.
Well, as Ken mentioned earlier, my latest Bottomless Soul show is on this very night at 11:30 Eastern, and it's and you'll all like it because it's spotlighting soul artists that the Beatles covered. and ones, and not like the Marvelettes. I focused on some lesser known ones. So, so go check that out. Or you can go to my Facebook page. I've got the link there. And also, Beatles coming back this week. And also Deep Soul is up, and I will be doing my own Facebook Live show this Thursday, the 24th, I think it is, whatever this Thursday is. I'll be doing a live show. So and just check out my Facebook page. You can look me up, and you'll see all the information there.
Okay, how about you, Tom?
Yeah, well, real quick, Kit, we were discussing about branding on Beatles and branding and all that stuff last week as well as this week. But, I was at the grocery store today and I had to get some toiletries. But I don't think Sherman heard your warning because I saw a little, Beatles on some toilet paper here. So.
I swear to God, I'm never going to live that comment down.
Anyways, Two Legs, we just did a show with a special guest. His name is Sam Wiles. He does the podcast Paul or Nothing over there in the across the pond in the UK, and we discussed our top 10. Or what we did was we ranked Paul's #1 singles from US and the UK, and I believe it was 11 in all. So that's up. That's on Podbean. So you can go to Podbean, type in Two Legs. You can hear that. We also just recorded a show. Also just talking about other music that we love. I mean, sometimes you just get a little tired of talking about Paul, so we just ratted off a bunch of other groups that we love to listen to as well. But you can reach out to us on our you can email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at Two Legs, the Paul McCartney podcast, and we've got some really cool interviews coming up soon, and that's what's going on.
All right. I listened to the show, by the way, with Sam Wiles. Really good.
Thank you.
Sam said something in that show that really got me thinking.
Oh, really?
He actually said, and we'll throw this out to our listeners, that Coming Up is the greatest David Byrne song that the Talking Heads didn't record. Now, wow.
Interesting.
That kind of makes sense in a way if you think about it. Huh.
Yeah.
Let everybody ponder about that till our next show. Joe, how about you?
Well, you can go over on YouTube and always subscribe to me, and that's Mean Mr. Mayo. Just forget the mustard, hold the mustard, and go heavy on the mayo. And like I say, I'll do a lot of Beatles videos from time to time and other music and other fun stuff. And I do a lot of live streams and chats. So we have a lot of raps just talking about Beatles and solo Beatles stuff and going on for an hour or two or more. So that would be nice if you were to subscribe.
Very good. All right. Before I give you my information, I want to make sure we don't forget this because this is very important. Kit's actually going away for a whole month, folks. She's going to be on vacation, and so we're going to be taking a break. And the next time that we're going to be doing a show will be the day after Memorial Day.
No, we're doing the following week. We were doing the following Monday, I thought.
Oh, I thought it was the Tuesday after.
Oh, I think we decided on the Monday, like the following Monday, like the first Monday.
Okay. All right. Correct me there. So it'll be the first.
So I better do that.
It's a good thing we got this out of the way. I really thought it was the day after. So it'll be. Do we have the date for that? We'll have to look
let
it
me
up.
check. Hang on. Yeah. So basically, we're taking May off. Is the short version of it. Okay, that will be, hang on, let me...
So it's the first Monday of June.
Yep, it will be June 3rd.
June
Okay.
3rd, yeah.
All right, so, and that will be, Ken will be back with us, Ken Womack, so we hope you join us for that. Just want to make a quick mention that on my website, which is kenmichaelsradio.com, I just did an interview with Dan Richter. Dan was John and Yoko's personal assistant during the Imagine period, and he's one of the many people that is interviewed in the new documentary, John and Yoko, Above Us Only Sky. And you can find the entire interview on the website. I have a page called Interviews, page 4. He was delightful to talk to. Over an hour of conversation with Dan. I also have tickets to give away to see the Fab Four in concert. one of the premier Beatles tribute bands. They're playing at the NYCB Theater in Westbury, Long Island on May the 3rd, and Tarrytown Music Hall in Tarrytown, New York, May the 5th. I have tickets to give away for both those shows. Just go to the website. It's the easiest thing in the world to win. Beatles Trivia is on the website every single week. You can win one of 9 prizes. Special contests can come at any time on the website. And probably while Kit's away, so we can all keep thinking about Kit, I think we'll be giving away a double shot of her books.
You mean the Kiddo Toolkit?
That's true. That's the Songs You Were Singing book and the Michael Jackson FAQ book. And I still have a Kiddo Tool tote bag to throw into the mix. Okay? All Kit all the time in your home with that Kiddo Toolkit. And then there's my other Beatles podcast, Things We Said Today, with Darren DeVivo and Alan Kozin, which probably will have a new show next week to look out for. That'll be on podbean.com and also on YouTube. Don't know what the topic is, but it's always interesting. All right. So that's
Ken,
about it.
before we go, you have some requests to show everyone your shirt. You've had like 5 comments, so they want to see your shirt.
Okay. This is a George Harrison collage that was put together by a great artist by the name of Shannon, who lives in New Jersey. Yeah, and she does a lot of great artwork, all types of rock artists, the Beatles, Kiss, Elvis Presley, puts all this artwork on T-shirts, on wine bottles, on mugs, hoodies, all kinds of things. And I got this as a present for my wife years ago. It's one of my favorite shirts to wear. It's George Harrison through the years. Okay. And she does one on each of the 4 Beatles. You can get a John shirt, a Paul shirt, a Ringo shirt, kind of like this. Okay. So I'm glad you guys liked it.
Yep, you got a number of comments. And we also want to thank Tom Brennan, for a loyal viewer, for suggesting doing a show on George's humor. It was a great idea. We had a lot of fun, I think, doing it.
Definitely.
Well, there's many sides to each of the 4 Beatles, and that's what we're going to be exploring here on this show. Okay?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to say this has been a blast, talking about George's humorous side.
Yep, and we want to thank Mean Mr. Mayo for joining us. It was really fun.
The pleasure's mine. Thanks so much for having me here and sharing the microphone.
Every now and then, hopefully we'll get you to fill in if one of us can't make it, which is always a possibility.
Yes.
I'd love it. I'd be honored.
Thanks. Oh, good.
So this has been great for this latest episode of Talk More Talk. I want to thank everybody who's watching right now, and thanks for your support of the show. Tell as many people as you can about Talk More Talk. If they're Beatle fans, especially if they follow the solo careers of the Beatles, as they should, then have them watch this show, Talk More Talk. Thanks so much to everybody for watching.
Amen.
And we will see you next time. Cheer down.
What?